Well, welcome to Uncut and Unfiltered Cosmetology Insights with Nathan Shaw, where we help aspiring and current beauty professionals master the business and the craft of cosmetology so that they can build successful, long lasting careers. Your guide is Nathan Shaw, a dedicated educator and working man's hairdresser who successfully built his schools from his earnings from behind the chair. And he generously shares his deep industry experience to challenge misconceptions and teach you the crucial skills needed to manage your career. I'm your host, Andy Traub, and today you're going to learn how to learn from the best and increase your likelihood of success in this industry by finding great mentors. So, Nathan, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, there's different kinds of mentors. Let's talk about one that is maybe the most common. And I'm thinking some salons might have this in place already. But let's talk about mentor relationships. We'll call it mentee, mentor. What are mentoring opportunities within a salon? What does that sometimes look like for someone who maybe has never worked in a salon?
I think those are some of the best ways to get your feet under you as a new stylist, right? I had the opportunity to do that. I had a brother that was a hairdresser for years before I was. But going and working in a salon with more seasoned stylists, and maybe your first role is literally just assisting a more seasoned or several of the more seasoned stylists. But there's such a great amount of knowledge you can learn from doing that. So I think, you know, even if you go into a salon and you're not the assistant, really watching and learning from those people that are doing what you wanna do.
Let's just say it's like nothing official, but like you're listening to this and you're like, I work at a salon and we don't have like an official program for that. What would be a savvy way or a smart way of approaching someone who you respect who's at your salon and communicating to them, hey, I really respect you and the work you do, and not just saying, will you mentor me? Which sounds like, will you give me your time for free? So how would you approach someone like that?
A lot of times, it goes back to giving something to them. Like, I remember working in the first salon I worked at, and there was another stylist that was just super not just efficient with speed, but, like, the quality of haircuts she could do.
Really?
And I'd watch her, and so when I wasn't busy, I'd sweep hair, I'd do things that I knew needed done around her, and not just her, but others, but also, like, it's like, "Hey, let me do things to take a little bit of burden off of her."
Yeah,
And because, when you're new, you don't just have a client in your chair at all times. You're trying to build
sure.
that clientele. And so
Yeah,
taking that opportunity to like sweep up her hair, it's like, oh, she needs, she's ringing up her guest or she needs something done for her guest. Then
yeah,
just jumping in where you see those opportunities and people notice that. People notice people that help them.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. What I heard you just say was if you want to mentor, be a great mentee until they go, hey, you're really helpful. I like you. You know what I mean? Like be an attractive mentee, right?
Absolutely.
So, I know that people listen to the show that also they own salons. Is what advice would you give to help them start to be more structured and making sure that their new people do have mentors?
I think it's in today's age in particular, there's so many opportunities for a new stylist to go to work, and some of that's independently. Salon suites are very popular now, where someone can go just rent their own little room by themselves
Yeah.
and be self-employed. To me, that's a death trap starting out because you do need that mentorship. And so I think if you own a salon where people are working in a community type environment, a community area within the salon, you have to, as an owner, establish those types of opportunities for your new staff, or you're not going to get them, let alone retain them if you do get them. So you need
Hmm.
to find ways that they can have a path to grow and also to learn, because school is really, it's short enough time. You learn quite a bit, but it is the basics. And then, you know, you got to get those reps. I talk about that a lot, but it's like you got to do a lot of reps before you get super, super efficient and super
Hmm.
confident in those haircuts or colors, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Mentors in the salon. That's an ideal situation in a lot of ways because obviously you're going to see the same at work.
Hmm.
And I like the idea of just sort of being around them as much as you can and help them as much as you can. That's a great starting point in the relationship because you're not asking anything. You're just saying the only thing you're asking is how can I help you? And they go, well, why would you want to do that? You go, well, I respect you and I think you do great work, and I want to be around and be an asset. So that's why. I just tell them, like, because I look up to you because you cut hair really fast, but you're also really good. And usually that's not, those things don't go together, right?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know? So I just, and again, I think that goes back to an earlier episode we had about networking is just be sincere in your praise and be specific, you know?
Yeah.
So let's talk about another kind of mentor, which is, the mentor that you, let's do the mentor that you may never ever meet, but
Mhm.
you see them from afar. I think that there's a lot of mentors that are available to people like this. Can you maybe give a story about a mentor that you maybe saw from afar and then ended up working with, or maybe you never worked with, but they mentored you because they just put out great content?
So yeah, I've had a couple experiences like that. A couple that come to mind, is I bought some courses that a hairdresser had put out. He's a famous
Yeah.
hairdresser, and I was like, oh, I'll never meet him. And same as Robert Cromians, and I never did meet him, but I did go to a hair show where he was on stage and watched him, and he really helped shape my career and how I would grew my business from his course, right? And I bought his course.
Wow.
Now, the flip side of that, I also had, you know, paid for courses from other people and actually ended up meeting them. And, one of them we potentially partnered up with to do a cutting curriculum for our school. And it happened because I had followed them. I had seen their work, the quality of work, the way they broke down haircuts and made them so understandable that it just made a lot of sense. And then we were able to have people like that in our school. Not every day, but they'd come, they traveled sometimes and did those specialty classes because we carried their curriculum. They actually came into our school and taught those things to our students.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I want to jump back to another one I didn't ask you about, which is, did you ever have mentor relationships when you were coming up from other people in your salon or in your town?
I did. I was fortunate in, my older brother kind of talked me into this beauty industry. He got me, like I said, he's the one that taught me about hair color chemistry, and it just lit a fire because I really loved math and science, and it made complete sense to me. And when I was in school, even I would go to his salon because he worked a lot of late evenings. He's kind of a night owl. He might go in at 10 or noon, but he also might be in the salon until midnight. And so I would go in after school and, help him out any way I could. And he'd been doing hair for enough years, had a huge clientele, was very sought after. And I was able to learn tips and tricks at a young age as a hairdresser that really helped me.
That's cool.
And then, back into those other salons I worked at, just, watching people and trying to help them. And then, eventually you help them enough, you ask them a few questions, they're more than happy to share some knowledge because you've been so helpful to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you, as you've grown in the industry and now are running schools, do people ask you? I guess what I'm getting at with the question is, are people like erring way on the side of caution where they're just not asking to mentor for mentorship very often at all, or do you get asked a lot?
That's the funny thing. I don't get asked a lot. Like when I teach classes, there will be some good questions from the students and, from people. But I find what tends to happen, and this is, I joke part of it's my appearance. Maybe I'm a little bit of an intimidating guy with the beard and the long hair, but it's the bolder students that might after class ask you more questions, and they'll try to like pick your brain. And I'm more than happy to share with them. These are my students. I want them to be successful. But I do find more people are afraid to ask.
Yeah.
Like you'll see people kind of stand back and they'll let someone else ask questions, and you can tell they're listening. And I try to be as open and approachable as possible because I want them to feel comfortable doing it. But unfortunately, I think, whether it's some of them are younger, it's their age, you know, or they're just feeling inexperienced in the industry, they're kind of afraid to ask. And I wish there'd be a little bit more boldness,
Yeah.
but it's always a smaller percentage that have the gumption, I guess, to come up and approach me and continue to ask me for more advice.
Yeah. So I think the lesson there is that people are usually not overwhelmed. Most people are not overwhelmed with
Hmm.
people asking them, right? And so if you're like, "Oh, I don't want to bother them," if someone approaches you, Nathan, and says, "I have a lot of respect for you, and I'm doing this, this, and this. I'd love your advice on this, this, and this." most people, and especially you, are going to go, okay, here's what I would do. And they're not bothered by that, right? As long as you're
Exactly.
an action taker and you're not just, hey, can I pick your brain? Well, that feels like stealing, right?
Exactly.
So let me ask about another angle on this, which maybe people haven't thought about this, but there's also the mentors of different parts of life and business that are your clients. I think that's a really unique dynamic. So I'd love to spend the rest of today's episode just talking about stories you've experienced from having clients. Obviously, those people are there because they want a service, but they also, I think, want a relationship with someone they trust. So tell me, what has your experience been like in the past with having clients that have basically become mentors in different areas of your business or personal life?
Yeah. So I have several examples of that. I was fortunate. Um, I worked in downtown Boise, in kind of the, I don't know if you want to call it the business district, but where a lot of businesses, reside. And as a result, I got a lot of clients from those businesses. And over the years, I had everything from attorneys to CPAs, um, you know, uh, the controller for a big healthcare system. I did both of the two probably biggest marketing companies in Idaho. I did both the owners because there was two of them, and I did the owner's hair for each of the marketing companies,
Nice.
which was a fun experience. And they were a wealth of knowledge about business and marketing and how to grow business. And the amazing thing is they were completely different type of people, right? And so you saw it from two different angles. And I loved it because I'd be cutting their hair and we'd talk business, and I learned so much from them. And it was really awesome to have that experience where you're talking to someone that does marketing for, you know, the universities in your state,
Wow.
and they're imparting knowledge to you as like this little salon of like, "Oh, here's some marketing tricks that work. They're going to
Yeah.
help grow your business."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you approach people, or is it just natural, in the process of conversation? I mean, do people appreciate it when you ask them for advice, or they feel like, what's the relationship like to where maybe, you can get mentorship in lots of different areas of life. But how did your clients take it when you're like, well, I mean, you own a marketing firm, so can I ask you marketing questions? I mean, were they upset? Were they, wait a minute, I thought, you were here to help me. I'm not here to help you. What's that like?
So yeah, I never had anyone that seemed upset. It was more just, I think, if you have enthusiasm about something, and if it's that's their world, right? And
Yeah.
if you're kind of enthusiastic about what they're doing and you're curious, people love someone that's curious because curiosity is like you're just, you're seeking knowledge. You want to
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and when you seek to, you're seeking to understand rather than just to, as you said earlier, like pick their brain and steal ideas. I think people are happy to give that knowledge, and I never once had an instance where people weren't willing to talk about things that I was just genuinely curious about and was like enthusiastic about. And I try to do the same, obviously, for them. I talk about their hair care regimen, their needs, and like impart all the knowledge that you should as a professional hairstylist.
Right.
But
Right.
when you're doing their hair on a regular basis, you've talked about that regimen enough times that like sometimes it does just naturally switch to what they do, and that
Sure.
curiosity gets piqued.
If someone wanted to have a few different kinds of mentors, they're thinking, what are the kinds of mentors that ideally you would have as you grow up in the industry?
Yeah. I think that's great. And I had so many myself. I think it's, again, if you're a new stylist, it's a senior stylist right within your salon, right? Someone that you can, like I said earlier, sweep their hair, clean up after. And so you can pick their brains about techniques you're seeing them do that maybe are new to you, or they give a result you hadn't thought of before. I was fortunate enough in my career, I educated for some product companies, right? And as a result of educating for them, I was partnered up oftentimes with the creative director for the one product company he's the guy who set the trends. Every spring and summer he did the new cuts and colors, and every
Wow.
fall and winter. And he was truly a master at the craft. And I was one of those guys that came more of at it from an engineering mindset, right? It's like, oh, if you teach me how to do this, I can do this. He could go in and like, construct it from the ground up.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was so cool because I had the opportunity to learn from someone that really approached it differently than I did because I feel like I was more the math science mind and would approach the geometry of a haircut, and he was truly an artist.
Yeah.
And by working with him, it kind of opened up both sides of my mind, right? And I realized not everyone's going to have that opportunity working for a product company, but again, with the current atmosphere of social media and some of the top stylists having lots of followers, they sell courses and programs, and there's so much knowledge you can gain from following them. I'm old enough, I was when I was buying those things, I was buying courses on CD. So I was listening to CDs and there wasn't the social media when I started. So it was like you bought a book. You bought it might even be a CD set with a book that had diagrams of how to break down the haircuts
Right.
and those types of things. You find those people that are where you want to be and you actually like take the advice they give, right? And you to your point earlier, you actually have to do it and put the work in that they're telling you to do, and that's how you're going to get to where they are.
Yeah. I would submit that there's very few people in this industry, and I would say early in the industry, that didn't have a great mentor along the way, you know? And where they say the student has become the master, that happens sometimes, where it's like that you might actually like leapfrog your mentor in success in some different ways. But I say that because it's just to humble yourself and say, I want help. I need help. And so if someone doesn't have any mentoring relationships, um, I think the combination of a few conversations we've had, finding a way to add value to that person, being sincere in your praise of them, not asking something from them right away. I think that's a huge turnoff.
Absolutely.
I do think that if you're gonna take ask for their time to be strategic and thoughtful, one tip I've had in the past is I'll just ask them, "What's your favorite lunch spot? What's your absolute favorite? Your go-to?" And if it's a guilty pleasure, judgment. If it's Subway, whatever, Arby's, I whatever. If it's Desh la Bapa, some fancy place, whatever. But what's your favorite? Like, what's your go-to if you could eat anywhere in town? Where would you go? Like, that's a question sort of out of nowhere. They'd be like, and they're gonna have an answer, right?
Right?
You'd say,
Yeah.
"Well, I would love to buy you lunch there, and whenever it works for you." But they like the food,
Yeah.
right? Because you just asked them what their favorite
Exactly.
place is, and
Yeah.
then you said, "I wanna buy you lunch at your favorite place." And then you say, "Whenever it works for you." And if it's their favorite place, they probably, like, wanna go. And so, again, that's sort of like a little hack of, like, getting time with someone and say, like, "What's your favorite place, and when's the next time I can buy you lunch there?" And, they know that there's no risks there because they know, well, at least the food's gonna be good, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that goes a long way to finding and respecting and understanding someone. Do some research.
Absolutely.
Find that connection. And I also would say this is one that's helped me in the past, when I've connected with people that have, influence. Oftentimes, talking about the thing that they're not known for can make you very memorable. So, if I know someone is really famous because they are, huge in the podcasting space or something like that, and they have a show about something I'm interested in. If I say, "Hey, like, how old are your kids now?" And they're like, they're, 8 and 7. "Oh, man, I had 3 kids, like, within 3.5 years, and I just tell you, it gets a lot easier." Like, you're not talking about the thing that they're known for. You're talking about something personal you can actually add value to. But that's another thing with mentors is if you can do some research to learn a little bit about them. Hey, you're from Indiana. Like my college roommate was from Indiana. He was from this town. Like, how close is that to where you were? Their brain is much more into like, oh, this is just a conversation with a friend versus like, what do you want?
Yeah.
Okay, you wanna pick my brain for $4 for a cup of coffee. No, okay, right. So be thoughtful, be strategic in that. Any last parting words on mentorship and the benefit? Maybe talk about the benefit of mentorship?
I think the biggest benefit is it's just gonna, it's gonna supercharge your career. It's gonna help you grow so much faster than trying to learn it all yourself through trial and error, right? Because, you know, inevitably you're gonna do some haircuts or colors that don't turn out how you want, and you're gonna learn from those, trust me. But anytime you can learn, shorten that learning curve to success, it's gonna help you in your career long term. And I think the final parting words is like be a mentor yourself, right? To the people out there that have been doing it a while and started to have some success, don't have that scarcity mindset that it's like, you know, I got to keep this all to myself. Like, share it. The more you share, the more you'll get. My brother used to have a saying. My little brother, he'd crack me up that people that hold things so close. If you're familiar with Lord of the Rings, he'd be like, "Oh, there's Schmeagol in it. It's
Yeah,
my
totally.
precious."
Yep,
That ring
yep.
was as precious, and
My
it sucked
precious,
him
yeah,
in, right?
yeah.
When it's like, no, don't hold it so tight and give it away. And when you give it away, you gain too, right? I love mentoring because it's opened up a whole new world for me in business and everything else that I didn't expect. But it came out of a love of sharing that information that, like, I learned from the school of hard knocks on some of them. And it's like, hey, let me shorten that curve for you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that, Nathan. Appreciate you.
Thank you.